So far, we've had experts come in from different parts of the world, Seattle, Minnesota, Italy. But now our next speaker is from right here, Bauke Sprenger, a partner from PwC, who's going to talk to us about Gen AI applications in finance. Welcome, Bauke.
Yes.
We can have a silent applause.
Apparently.
There you go.
Can't hear it anyway. So, good afternoon. To begin with, I'm not sure why I'm actually exactly fitted in this slot between two very technical infrastructural stories, and I'm going to talk about business. And I hope you're bearing with me, or maybe this is actually a more light intermezzo for a lot of you. What we're trying to talk about is actually on how we see AI and Gen AI impacting financial services, and especially when it comes to connecting to other industries and other businesses. So how it actually can boost embedded finance. To start with, I always tend to ask the audience, which is a bit big here, and I still see people moving in and out, is whether actually the whole concept of embedded finance is known to everybody. And let me explain it very quickly. If you embark on an Uber ride, which I suppose most of you did, the financial transaction, the payment, and a lot of other financial transactions at the back are hardly seen in the process of booking you a cab. This is what embedded finance is all about. It's not only about the payment. I think the most imminent or explicit part of the payment, the financial transaction, the financial service in that sense, is pushed behind it because everything is about the taxi ride, and maybe when you're tipping the rider, you suddenly see it. But at the back, there's a lot of financial transactions going on. Not only the payment to the rider and to Uber, but also the insurance of the car, the insurance of the rider, the loan where actually the car was paid for, and so forth. So that's the whole concept of embedded finance, where the financial transaction is embedded in an overarching service. And we're going to talk about that in the context of AI and where that is needed for. And one of the key reasons why this is important is because it is not going that well with financial services. And let's move on. And the key point is, and that's why the title is like this, by the way, it is not about the financial services product. So everybody that is here from a bank, an insurer, pension fund, investor, whatsoever, the key message is your clients don't really bother about your product because they use this as a means for something else. They want to have a house and they want to have a living there without too much hassle. They want to have mobility, or they want to be able to travel or do other stuff. And that's where all the underlying financial services are important for. That's where the mortgage comes from. That's where the payments come from, where the insurance products come from, and so forth. So that is why it's important, and especially because the financial services industry is not doing that well, and AI and Gen AI is one of the ways out to get back on the podium. So this is where this story is about. Oh, now suddenly we do see the video that was attached to the slide. So what we're going to discuss very quickly here is this current situation in financial services very quickly and briefly, just to show you how bad it is and what needs to be done. What the opportunity is of AI and Gen AI, especially and specifically when it comes to embedded finance, and especially when it comes to the client data, the use of AI and Gen AI, and what is needed to get there. So that's, let's say, the program of today. So if we look at the financial services industry, there are a couple of key trends that are going on. Obviously, we have a humongous amount of macro trends when it comes to geopolitical issues, urbanization issues, aging issues, environmental issues, and so forth and so forth. There are also other stuff. So expectations from clients are fundamentally different if you compare it to 20 years ago. Position of banks and insurers and pension funds are changing, and also the expectations from your side as well. Role in society is changing, especially if you see how regulators and politicians are looking at it. Important to see, and when you see financial, especially in financial crime, there's so much work that's being pushed into the bank that actually their role is changing, and it's also pushing them back in the value chain. Technological innovations that go around in the surrounding of the bank and in the environment of banks and insurers that are impacting their business. Marketeers usually kill me for this statement, But it is not, the client behavior is not about the expectations, or the client expectations is not about what they really expect. It's actually coming from the technological availability of services that are there. So when we look back 20, 30 years ago, we didn't go to an ATM to check our balance 2 or 3 times a day. On average, a banking app, probably not all of you, but on average, a banking app is checked multiple times a day, between 1 and 3 times on average per person, to check a balance, you have an overview, do a transaction or whatsoever. This is outside the use of Apple Pay and those kind of means, or Google Pay. So the technological advancements changes our behavior towards a bank and an insurer, and also our expectations from that sense. And that's continuously evolving. And then obviously scale. And this is about the profitability of the sector. I know that if you look at the financial services industry from a pure IFRS profit perspective, it seems that profits are soaring for this industry. However, and this is a small piece of economical lecture here, if you look at it from an economic profit perspective, so meeting shareholders' expectations based on the risk profile of a financial institution, this is an example for banks, but we can make a similar story for insurers. They actually, only a few banks really deliver value. They really create value. On average, actually value is being destroyed by the financial service industry globally. This is the example for banks. If you take insurers or investment managers, there are similar patterns visible. And this is not only for 1 year, this is for year on year on year. So it seems like they're very profitable, but in fact they're not. And that's important because currently banks are more under pressure than you would think. Investment room, for instance in innovation, for instance in customer interaction, is lagging behind mostly due to this. Not only due to this, but also to the wave of regulation that's being pushed onto financial institutions. I'll keep this very short. You can see, by the way, pattern also when it comes to the geographical locations of those banks, between especially Asian and Chinese banks and the European and US banks. We're not going to dive into that as well. And then the whole story about embedded finance. Because embedded finance was a hype 3 to 4 years ago. And then obviously all the attention went into AI and Gen AI since the upcoming of ChatGPT. However, if you see on what institutions are looking for instance on Google, and where the innovation should go, you see financial institutions actually looking more and more into possibilities for embedded finance. And I already explained the basics of embedded finance, and we'll go into it deeper as well. But you have to be aware that if you want to, as a financial services institution, and you want to be relevant to your client, is that if you want to embed your service into an overarching product or service, whether it is buying your television set at a store and getting a loan, a buy now, pay later kind of construction to it, like where Klarna is very successful with, as one of the examples, or whether you want to insure your car straight away with your car like Tesla is doing, for a lot of reasons, you need to actually push a lot of data back and forth. And especially if you want to make this relevant, there's so much AI and Gen AI required to be able to provide that service in a meaningful, relevant way for your clients, that you have to collaborate on that. And this is where the point of the story should be, is you have to have your data and your AI act together to be able to do this, especially between the financial services institution and the other markets. And I'll give you a couple of examples here. So if you look at embedded finance, we defined roughly 7 arenas, commercial arenas, where embedded finance can be very relevant in, especially when it comes to the interaction between banks or insurers and other industries. You can see in the top line, we're talking about housing, financial freedom, so this is all about your retirement. Housing is everything around living in a house. So not only the mortgage, but actually making sure the house is there, that the utilities bills and utility connections are done with, that your internet cable is connected, your insurance is covered, your security and alarm systems are covered, and so forth and so forth. You can even have your whole, let's say, furniture set being leased by companies like IKEA. So what they basically do is provide you a bed as a service, where actually you get a new one after so much years when it is done. And the financial transaction, which is essentially a lease, will be provided for you. This is exactly what embedded finance is about in the example of housing. Financial freedom is actually a financial services arena in itself. Then it's about unburdening of SMEs. When it comes to billing or accounting services, whether it's about insurance, could be warehousing, could be payroll services, and so forth and so forth. I already gave you some examples of in the mobility space as well. Tesla is an interesting example in this context, providing insurance with the car, especially because insurers in the beginning didn't know how to insure an electrical car. They didn't have the data to see what an electrical car would do from a damage perspective and all kind of liability perspective. So Tesla actually provided the insurance by themselves with the car. Travel and lifestyle, very interesting example. I will come to that as well, where actually you see a mix of financial services institutions as well as non-financial institutions entering into the space. Depending on your geography, education and healthcare. Typically in some countries you have to save or even buy futures to get your kids into a university, or actually to provide for healthcare. In some other countries, obviously like ours, that's arranged in a different way, but still there you could see variations of financial services mixed with other services as well, especially when it comes to vitality, sports and education and those kind of stuff. You can see the examples where they are. To make a journey for a client relevant in this space, you need to have all that client data, being able to have an interoperability between those areas to make sure that the data is consumed, is being analyzed, is being read, is being understood, and actually actionable things come with it. And then the hard part comes in, because how do you want to interact with a client to propose a certain service to them in a proper way? And this is where actually the generative part of Gen AI comes in, and especially when it comes to conversational AI, where you want to interact in a different way with your financial institution or the service provider. And here, I think the key is, it is about consuming all the data, understanding, analyzing all the data through AI. And actually, by the way, a small intermezzo in that, you could theoretically, and that's already being looked at for 20 years, put a bank together fully rule-based. So you didn't need AI. The only thing is the complexity of all those rules makes life a lot easier when you push this in a, let's say, language model or even a numerical model. And that's where actually the Gen AI piece comes in. But the interaction part is interesting. So by now we're actually building, and I would like to invite everybody to get to our booth in the other hall, to show you actually how interaction from a Gen AI perspective would look like in a banking arena. Because nowadays people have their app mostly, where they have their oversight of their financial transactions and their accounts, and maybe on their credit cards and those kind of things. On the other hand, the question is, if you want to interact in some other way with the bank, if you want to push your relocation through it, or actually your card is broken and you need a new one, or there's something else not working. Mostly what happens is that you can't find your way on the website, and then you have to go into an FAQ, and then you enter into the contact center where you're being helped, hopefully in the future, with an AI assistant, Gen AI based assistant, which is being tested right now by a couple of banks. But the question is, why don't you start with the interaction straight away with an AI assistant who pushes and helps you and execute all the transactions? If you want to buy a car, apply for the loan through a chatbot. And ideally, and that already is being built, but while talking to a avatar that serves you, but also executes on it. So not only providing your information, but making sure that it is fully actionable. And this is where the generative AI comes into place. An example of embedded finance and how that could work. So this is JP Morgan. JP Morgan said, we want to be able to actually serve our clients better, be closer to them, being more relevant to them, and also to have a better happy feeling around the bank in itself. What they basically said is, let's build a whole ecosystem, an arena. Let's go back for a second. So this is typically the travel and lifestyle arena, where we would say, we are going to take it up against the Expedias, the Booking.coms, the car rental agencies and so forth, the airliners, and be the center of interaction when it comes to travel. So they got themselves booking sites. They are owning airport lounges. They have a digital but also a real assistant that can serve you and help you with your travel issues, hotel bookings, everything is being done with you. And they build a whole ecosystem around it to make sure that they are relevant on this way. And this is where all the data comes in, where the data analytics comes in, the consumption comes in, the underlying infrastructure from a banking perspective to piece everything together and to make you a relevant option. Because client A would like to go to Paris in full luxury, and client B wants to go to Thailand in bunk beds. And only the client data and the analysis of it is the way to dissect one client from the other. And this is where this becomes relevant. And what do you need to have and be able to do when it comes to these kind of ecosystems and provide meaningful embedded finance services? And the key point is, in our view, around what we call the DNA loop. And this is not the DNA that you have in your cells, but it is about data, and again, data, then network effect, and then activities. Because this loop needs to start somewhere, and it starts with your data capabilities and your data infrastructure and the way to work around it with the use of AI and Gen AI. So when you get more data, you actually are able to attract more buyers, more clients, more users, which provide you with additional data. With that data, you can provide new services that actually will attract more clients and also more data. So to push this wheel, the only thing that you can work with is starting on the data end. This is where a nice example, and also that also everybody knows, is how this works with Google. They started with all the data and from the search engine and the data that they obtained from clients. Then they are able to add additional services like Gmail, like Google Maps, YouTube, and whatsoever to provide more services that actually provide them even with more data. And then they get more users out of that, and so forth, and this gets this ball rolling. And this is what I would say to every company, whether it's a financial services provider, which I work with, or any provider that actually wants to connect and fully serve and unburden their clients, is to start with pushing this wheel to get your data act together, your data infrastructure together, your capabilities together, your AI piece together to get this all actionable, and then start rolling on this wheel. That was actually where I wanted to talk about. Thanks for your attention, and I think you will be going back to all the technical fireside chats, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Bauke.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one question before the last fireside chat of the day.
Yeah.
Any arms shooting up? Because we've got mics flying around that you can catch.
That's a no, I think.
Well, you're going to be around, yeah? You mentioned you have a stand. We can visit you.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Bauke.
Thank you. See you later. Have a good time. Have a good time. Thank you. Bye-bye.